All this mess, unacceptable. 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 I do have plywood storage back there. That's acceptable. Not being able to sit back against the wall, unacceptable. Was acceptable. Now it's not. So I've never actually done a body weight test on these shelves. I never felt the need to do it. I've got a pull-up bar in the house. Why do it on these shelves? But I have a feeling some daft sod is going to ask me if those shelves will hold my body weight. So for you, you daft sod, this one's for you. So my first point of call is to move these shelves above this line here, because below this line is a full width sheet of plywood. They want to go up about 11 centimetres. I'm going to take measurements from the top of each shelf because I know they are level and raise them up 11 centimetres. That should give me enough clearance below to store a full sheet of plywood. Here I'm making marks at 11 centimetres above the top of the shelves. I can't go too far wrong with the placement of these as long as I go vertically because they're tied into the stud work behind. So I actually had some really bad blowout when I took the screws out of each shelf bracket. So when I reattached them to the wall, I just took a sander and just knocked off all the splinters that came out. Best thing about these screws is that you don't need to drill pilot holes. You can just screw them straight in. The downside is that if you have to take them out, they just rip the wood to shreds. But they're still holding up nicely. So I won't go into too much detail about these shelves because I actually got this idea from Jay Bates. I'll leave the link in the description if you want to check his video out. It's definitely worth a watch. But these are effectively made out of CLS timber, and for 2.4 metre length you can get it for about £2.74 from Wicks and B&Q. Okay, sheet material storage. Let's not talk about how I managed to cut through the visqueen sheet when installing the flooring. So despite having a small workshop, I'm actually quite fortunate really that I've got room to store sheet materials. Because I know a lot of you guys haven't, you know, and it's a struggle being in a small converted workshop. So I'll show you how I managed to get around storing these sheet materials because they're not quite full length. So the internal measurement from wall to wall is 2.43 metres. A full sheet of plywood is 2.44 metres in length. So all I do is just cut a 2 centimetre strip from one end of the plywood and then it fits in perfectly. Working in a small shop, we don't have a right lot of room as it is, and I know some of you guys, you know, you're having to find external storage for sheet goods, or you know, you just don't have the space to accommodate it. So I'm quite fortunate really that I managed to store sheet materials, and it's a happy compromise just trimming it down 2 centimetres. can see, just rough cut it out with a jigsaw and it's in. So that is tons better now. I've managed to get both sheet materials, the insulation board and the plywood, right up against the wall now after raising those shelves up. As you can see, it's not perfect. It's how I do it. It's a compromise of having to make by trimming the plywood down to essentially get a full sheet of plywood into the workshop. And it's not perfect, but it's mine, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Well, apart from having more room, like, wouldn't we all? Let's move on to the bike rack. I wasn't sure which way I wanted the bikes to be against the wall, so here I'm checking which way will be best. Then I made a mark where the tyres touched the wall. I also filled the shelves to check for clearance. So I made a template. I found this design online with the measurements, and I went for this one because I've got some of this dowel left from my recent push-up parallettes video. The hole, I wanted to use a 35mm Forstner bit, but I'm going to have to use a 40mm one. Now it is a bit loose, but I think it'll hold up well to hold the bike up. It'll just end up pulling it to the front, because the 35mm one was a nicer fit, but you get what you pay for. That's all I'm going to say about that bit. And I'm a little bit impatient to wait around for a new Forstner bit. Plus I don't want to pay for one. And I want to get this project finished today. I don't want to wait around for another Forstner bit. So I'm going to get the remaining pieces drawn out and cut out at the bandsaw. And then I'm going to cut out the 2 backing pieces as well. So the error that I made when making the first one is that I rounded off the corners before finding the centre point of where these 2 points cross, which meant the hole I've drilled out is off centre slightly that way. So hopefully by drilling out the hole first, I can keep them in centre. I've cut out 2 back pieces. These measure 10 centimetres by 18 centimetres, and I'm going to attach them to the side pieces with pocket holes. Pocket screws that I use are the ones from Triton. I buy these from Amazon, and they are a lot cheaper than your Craig ones for essentially the same screw. So I've just swapped out the 1 1/4 inch pocket screws for the 1 inch pocket screws because I assumed that this were 19mm thick. It's not, it's actually 17mm, so the screws blew out slightly. So I just took those out and put the 1 inch screws in, and they fit properly. I hand sanded with 400 grit and breaking over the edges too before applying boiled linseed oil for finish. So that's the bike rack's complete, and it's given me back a little bit of floor space. Is it a perfect solution? Not really, but it is a solution. They are holding up really well. The design that I saw online did have a end cap attached to the dowel, but I've actually cut them slightly longer, so hopefully if the bikes do fall from side to side, there's enough excess in the dowels to prevent them from completely falling over. But I mean, you could quite easily just add an end cap to it and just pin it into the end of the dowel and you'll be away. I talked about my plywood storage and my J-Bates style shelves, and that's about it for this video. Hopefully you didn't find it too boring. If you did like it, I would properly appreciate if you give it a thumbs up and if you tap that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.